a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Greetings and welcome to Alcorn State University's 2022 MLK Convocation. I'm the Reverend Dr. C.J. Rhodes, and I am glad to welcome you virtually to Oakland Memorial Chapel, where we will share in just a moment a message about Dr. King and the values that ought to motivate us today. I am grateful for President May for calling us to holy convocation, as it were, to remember the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to see the ways in which his life and legacy continue to inspire us. After an invocation, we will hear from student Xavier Lewis, who will sing for us "A Change is Gonna Come." Will you pray with me? Almighty and loving and wise God, thank you for this day. Thank you for your prophet, Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you for Alcorn State University. Would you allow this service to edify and motivate us, that we too would be drum majors for the kind of values that Dr. King embodied and shared with the world, so that through us we may cultivate a beloved community where all of your people, all of your children, have everything they need. In your name we pray. Amen.
I was born by the river in a little tomb. Oh, just like that river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, and I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Say I go to the movies and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me no, hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. And then I go to my brother, and I say, brother, help me please. And my brother winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there were times when I thought I could last too long. But now I see that I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Thank you, Xavier, for that powerful message through song. We believe that change will come. We may be the ones that usher it in. Giving all praise to God, we are thankful for President Nave, Provost Wooden, all the members of the administration, fellow members of the faculty, staff, student body, alumni, and friends of the university. We are thankful for the opportunity to come to you in this virtual space as the university reflects on the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We do so in the midst of another COVID surge, understanding that social distancing and virtual reminders of this pandemic are the norm, at least for now. Nevertheless, we can connect in this way to be reminded of why we, the living, have a responsibility to make the world a better place. That is why I'm encouraged to join in with many around the nation in not only remembering our role in cultivating the beloved community, but also being reminded of our role in rediscovering and even revolutionizing the values that allow us to live a more prosperous, unified, and just life in the world. I'm excited, therefore, to share our theme today, revolutionizing our values for the sake of the beloved community. You know, every spring semester, I have the opportunity to teach a new group of students in my Introduction to Ethics course. Every year, dozens of students gather in the classroom setting, and on the first day of the class, usually the day after MLK Day, I review the syllabus with them, ask if they have any questions or concerns, then I give them their first assignment. Write down on a piece of paper their name, their classification, their declared major, and what they anticipate getting out of the class. All of them complete the first assignment with ease. They know their name, they know their classification, most of them know their declared major. But when it comes to that second question, what do you expect to get out of the class? What do you expect to learn? Many of them are puzzled. They are inquisitive. They're trying to figure out what exactly do they anticipate getting from the class. In reality, many of them are much like that NFL player who said, I'm here just so I won't get fined. Is a required elective or preferred elective. They don't know what to anticipate or expect throughout the semester. And so at the beginning of the class, they simply say, I'm here to learn. I'm here to grow. I'm here to make sure I can complete my degree plan. But I'm thankful that at the end of the semester, once we have gone through the midterms and we are now at the season for finals, many of them attest that the class was better for them than they had ever imagined. That it wasn't just about learning more information, learning dates and names and places, learning terms and learning about various ways to apply critical thought. They became, as it were, better people. Because ethics is not just about knowledge, it is about character. That is a part of our brand here at Alcorn State University. We are where knowledge and character matter. We live in an age where that message and motto must resound from Mormon and Natchez and Vicksburg and all around Mississippi and the nation. That it's not enough to talk about knowledge. We must also be people of character. If the higher institutions of learning in Mississippi do only the first part, helping students acquire knowledge, and fail to accomplish the second part, helping them love character, they would have helped to make students smarter, but not wiser. They would have made them more professional, but not purposeful. They would have helped students get careers without understanding the calling. Our times and seasons in which we live in America and around the globe are calling for people of character, calling for people who understand values. Even in the business industry, we're seeing a greater call to this. For years, we had a hard pivot toward with STEM knowledge, STEM careers, and no hate on STEM. We need STEM. We need science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But employers are understanding that those students are often leaving with hard skills and they have left the soft skills behind. It's not enough to be able to perform the job. You got to be able to communicate effectively, both in writing and verbally. You've got to have, as it were, the kind of emotional intelligence that allows you to have both self and social awareness, so that you can move and operate in diverse spaces in meaningful, loving, and transformative ways. I've come by to tell you today that we need a revolution in our values. We need to rediscover our values. It's not enough for us to be smart. We've got to be wise. We see in our country how being smart but not wise can help this nation fall apart. There are many smart people. There are many well-connected people. There are people with networks and net worth. There are people who are famous and fabulous on social media. The question of the hour is, who are the people of character who will lead us through this dark age into a better tomorrow? Those who will help us, as it were, cultivate the beloved community. Thus, we pause today to remember the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, not just because of his daring dreams and his soaring oratory, but also because he was a man of values. Yes, he had vision. He constantly reminded us of the need for values. In a message he preached in 1954, Dr. King talked about rediscovering lost values. Used as his text a gospel story about young Jesus and his parents, Mary and his stepfather, Joseph. And they were leaving the temple grounds and discovered a day later that Jesus was not with them. They had to go back and get Jesus. I believe, based off of what Dr. King shared, that many of us have gone a day's journey and we've left some values behind. We've gone on and we've become famous and fabulous. We have degrees. We're moving along in life. We are being well connected and we're doing all kinds of things, but many of us have lost values. Dr. King in that message reminded them in that church, and I remind us today, we've got to rediscover lost values. In that sermon, he offered up two values that must be rediscovered. He, remind you, was preaching this in 1954, but these words are as real and raw today as they were a few generations ago. First, he said we must rediscover the value, the lost value, that in reality, the universe is built on a moral foundation. All the freedom work that Dr. King engaged in was largely rooted in the conviction that right is right and wrong is wrong. It wasn't a merely political or social or economic campaign for human rights and human dignity and civil rights and civil liberties. Yes, he was standing up for oppressed black people in the South. Yes, he was standing up for the poor everywhere, but he did so based on the belief the arc of the moral universe is long but bends towards justice. He believed that there were principles of moral and character, principles and precepts that were as real as the laws of physics. He said, just like we wouldn't intuitively jump off of a building because we knew we could get hurt, we ought not to hate because we ought to know that the consequence of hurting others is harm to ourselves and to our world. He said, world, universe is a moral place. It is built upon the precepts and principles of a God who created right and wrong, good and justice and beauty. And we've got to reclaim that. We've got to remind one another that we cannot live in a world that is amoral and immoral. That we've got to live in a world where we understand that we will either live together as brothers and sisters or die together as fools. As we see increasing balkanization between people based on race or religion or color or gender or politics, we are in a serious and dire moment in the history of this nation where we could tear this nation asunder. We've got to reclaim, we've got to rediscover that there are moral principles that guide us, that lead us. And if we lean into them, we can make our personal lives better. We can make our world better. We can be better in how we advance our careers, not just for our own good, but for God's glory. I believe that the world is desperately in need of those who understand there's more to life than merely the material. There's also the moral. He said in the sermon that it's not the issue that we are not smart enough or don't know enough. We live in one of the greatest moments of the scientific revolution. He said that in 1954, but look, we live in a moment where we have almost everything we need in terms of basic necessities, as it were, in a smartphone. We have our camera, we've got our watch, we can even use our smartphone or our smartwatch to check our blood pressure, our heart rate, our pulse rate. I mean, we have advanced so much technologically and scientifically, such that people are even discovering ways to colonize Mars. But even as we advance scientifically, we are declining spiritually. As we advance militarily, we are declining morally. He says we must reclaim that truth that the world, the universe, is moral. Secondly, he said we must rediscover this value, the value that the universe is under spiritual control. He said not only is the universe built on moral foundations and principles, but that the universe is guided by spiritual reality. Now, I'm not here to preach to you, but I believe many of us have longed for something deeper than the shallow thrills of decadence and decay, that we begin to recognize as a nation, as a world, that there are some things more precious than silver and gold, that there ought to be a purpose greater than ourselves, that we ought to know who we are and whose we are, because when you understand spiritual reality, when you understand that this world didn't come into existence simply by its own volition, but that there's a creator who spoke all things into being, it gives us a sense of gratitude. And when we are grateful, we don't mistreat one another. We don't treat each other as if we are cheap things. Therefore, I want to add a third thing we must reclaim to what Dr. King said. But not only should we reclaim that this is a moral universe and a universe guided by spiritual power, we must treat one another not as means to ends, but as ends in themselves. Oh, we live in a time much like the 1950s where people are being thingified, where people are being treated as simply workhorses. We've seen this through the pandemic, have we not? That there are certain people that we have just abused in the workforce. We've underpaid them, undervalued them, but still wanted them to overperform. We have gone to a place where we have put more faith in science than we have souls. We put more faith in technology than we have people. We measure our success by our network rather than our networks. We have to be a people who understand and appreciate that people are human beings created in the image and likeness of God and ought to be treated as such. And it is when we reclaim that value in the basic human dignity of all people, people you like, people you don't like, people you agree with, people you disagree with, then we can move beyond what Dr. King called, and I would add one other, racism, classism, sexism, and militarism. How did he serve this nation, this world? He did so by reclaiming those values, rediscovering those values, and reminding us of how important those values are. As I begin to close, I want to share then, in conclusion, my fleeting thoughts on what it means to rediscover and revolutionize our values. As a people, as a nation, we must first of all reprioritize values. We must believe that values are valuable. In a time when we think that it's all about technology and science and machines and the ways that we can continue to impress ourselves and others is all about cars and cash and cribs. We've got to reprioritize values. We've got to reprioritize what it means to simply say thank you. What it simply means to respect one another. What it means to respect life. And just because you step on my shoes, I don't need to shoot you over there. We've got to reprioritize values. We've got to believe that values are indeed important. I mentioned earlier that businesses are finally waking up to this. That's not enough to hire smart people. We've got to hire ethical people. It would be a shame and a travesty if you graduate, students, from Alcorn State University and you got knowledge in your head but no love in your heart. We've got to reprioritize values. Which also means we must reclaim, or as Dr. King said, rediscover values. There's some values that we've abandoned, some values we've left behind. There are values we learned in our families, in schools, in our religious institutions, right here at Alcorn and other institutions of higher learning that we must reclaim. There's some things that we thought we had to grow out of that were no longer useful or vital for us. How we treat one another, how we treat the planet, how we go back and understand that life is a gift and everything we have is a gift. I pause here parenthetically because I'm reminded of my grandmother who grew up during the Great Depression. She was a wonderful woman who lived in such a way, shaped by those experiences of the Great Depression, that she did not waste anything. She grew her own vegetables and cooked and preserved them. And when we would sit down to eat, she would make sure we cleaned our plates, and whatever we did not eat, she put into a scrap tin for the dog. She made sure we could appreciate what we had. We had to be grateful and not entitled, because what we have today could be gone tomorrow. Friends, beloved, we've got to reclaim some values. The value of just treating folk right and decently. And third, we must revolutionize our values. The reality is many people have values, they're just the wrong ones. Our nation in many ways has values, it's just the wrong ones. We spend more on military than we do on education. We have misprioritized values. When we treat people like things, as cogs in a machine, we value something, but it's the wrong thing. We've got to revolutionize our values. We've got to no longer believe that absolute power and decadence and pleasure are the ultimate goals of life. We have got to revolutionize our values so that we can, again, as Dr. King said, live together as brothers and sisters, die together as fools. It means, in the words of David Brooks, we've got to revolutionize values in this way. We've got to put more stock in our eulogy virtues than our resume virtues. Our resume virtues are the things we put on paper to get a job, to advance in life, to get a raise, to get bonuses. It's those things we do. It's the hustle and the bustle. It's the grind. It's what we try to do to make a name for ourselves, become IG models, to be fabulous on Facebook, to be trendy on Twitter. But there comes a moment, my beloved friends, when we understand that when our name is called up yonder, it won't matter how much money you've made, how much bank you got. It will not matter how many friends you have on Facebook. It won't matter how many followers you have on Twitter. It won't matter how many folks have taken your videos on TikTok and made them viral. It will not ultimately matter how much money you've made and what career you've established for yourself. It will not ultimately matter what organizations you belong to. What will ultimately matter is what people will say about you in their eulogy. It will matter most not about what you made, but the life that you made. It will not matter most about what kind of life you lived, but the life you lived. In other words, not how the hog you were, but the kind of life that was significant enough. People to say at your funeral, here lies somebody who loved other people. Here lies somebody who did good when others did wrong. Here lies somebody whose life was not lived in vain. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached a message called Drum Major Instinct. He said the reality is all of us have a drum major instinct. All of us as it were, want to lead the sounds of dynamite. All of us want to be the number one. All of us want to sit in the center chair. All of us want to be the boss. That's a human inclination. That's a human intuition. But he said every now and again we all think realistically about that something we call death, that common denominator that will touch each of us. Hear me. One day we're going to die. Just like we were born into this world, we will exit this world. We will shuffle off this mortal coil. We will become the culinary delight of terrestrial worms. When we die, the question will be asked, what did you do with the life you lived? Dr. King says, if you must call me a drum major, call me a drum major for justice. Call me a drum major for peace. Call me a drum major for righteousness. He said, I won't have all these other things to leave behind. At my funeral, don't tell them all the accolades and accomplishments I made. Don't tell them about where I went to school, but tell them that Martin King loved somebody. Martin King served somebody. And I want my prayer for you to be this, that you would live in such a way that your living will not be in vain. That the way you serve, the way you help, the way you transform this nation and this world will be that thing that gives meaning and significance to that short dash between the date you were born and the date you died. We must reprioritize our values. So I leave with this question. What do you value? Do you value those things that have eternal weight of glory? Those things that are transient and passive? If you have values that are sustainable through any moment and season and time, you may be a prime candidate to help cultivate the beloved community where all God's children, white men and black men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, can experience freedom, not just in the by and by, but here and now. Change gonna come through you and me when we revolutionize, reprioritize, and rediscover what really matters in life. God bless you.